You've probably noticed something strange. The more attention you give people, the less they seem to value it. You text first, you check in, you try to be kind, honest, direct. But the more available you are, emotionally or otherwise, the faster you become background noise. And then, when you finally stop chasing, when you pull back, suddenly they start wondering where you went. Suddenly they miss you. Suddenly your absence feels heavier than your presence ever did. This is not an accident, it's psychology. The human mind isn't wired to desire what is easy, obvious, or always available. We desire mystery, we desire challenge, we desire the unknown. And more than anything else, we obsess over things we don't understand and can't fully control. This video is not about playing games. It's not about manipulation. It's about understanding the psychological mechanics of attention, value, and desire. Because when you learn how to hold your center, when you stop overexposing your presence, when you understand how to use emotional distance correctly, you become magnetic, you become powerful, you become unforgettable. Let's break it down. The brain is wired for incompletion. To understand emotional obsession, we have to begin with a simple truth. The brain hates unfinished stories. When we don't have full closure on someone or something, our mind loops on it over and over. Psychologists call this the Zeigarnik effect, the tendency to remember and fixate on incomplete experiences more than completed ones. This is why ghosting can feel so haunting. It's not just the rejection, it's the lack of clarity. You don't know why they left. You don't know what changed. You don't know what you did wrong. So your brain replays every moment, trying to solve the puzzle. Now reverse it. When you are the one who disappears quietly, calmly, without explanation, you become the puzzle in someone else's mind. That's the obsession trigger. It's not about being cruel. It's about understanding that mystery is more powerful than clarity. The more people think they understand you, the less energy they devote to you. But when you become slightly unpredictable, when your presence becomes something they can't fully anticipate, they lock in, they start watching, they become invested. Overexposure kills interest. Let's break a dangerous myth. If I'm always there for them, they'll value me more. No, they'll value you less. The more emotionally available you are, the more they'll unconsciously assume you need them. You're not going anywhere. You have nothing else going on. Think about it. If someone is always replying instantly, always agreeing with you, always pouring themselves out, you stop asking questions, you stop being curious, you stop trying. This is the paradox of modern dating and relationships. Everyone wants connection. No one respects neediness because neediness isn't connection, it's emotional demand. And emotional demand suffocates. If you want people to value your presence, you have to make it rare. We crave what feels scarce. We devalue what is always available. So stop trying to be omnipresent. Start becoming a little less reachable. Start allowing space to grow between interactions. That space, that's where desire grows. Mystery, transparency. There's a cultural obsession today with authenticity. Be real, be vulnerable, be open. That's great advice for deep relationships. But early on, whether in attraction, networking, business, the most powerful thing you can be is unreadable. Not fake, just selective. Think about a movie trailer. If it shows you everything, the entire plot, every twist, all the jokes, do you go see the film? Of course not, because the mystery's gone. But if it shows just enough to spark curiosity, you're hooked. Humans aren't drawn to what they fully understand. We're drawn to what we think we're about to figure out, but can't. You want to make people obsess? Be just outside the line of clarity. Make them ask, what's he really thinking? Why did he say it like that? What does he want from me? Does he even care? And remember, you don't owe anyone an emotional explanation. Just because someone wants to figure you out doesn't mean they should get to. Let them wonder. Let them project. Let their mind do the work. Scarcity as emotional gravity. Scarcity drives obsession. When we believe something is limited, a product, a window of opportunity, a person's time, we assign more value to it. Now apply this emotionally. The person who is less available emotionally, who doesn't give instant validation, who has a world beyond the other person's attention, they become gravitational. Why? Because their presence feels like a privilege, not a given. You've felt this before. The person who's slightly out of reach, slightly cold, slightly unpredictable, you don't forget them. And it's not because they were better. It's because their presence wasn't guaranteed. That emotional scarcity, it creates gravity. You are the prize. Act like it. This is the core shift. Stop trying to be liked. Start becoming valuable. Most people are so desperate to be validated, they forget that the person with the stronger emotional frame always wins the game. You become the prize when you don't react emotionally to disinterest. You don't overinvest early. You don't chase, beg, or explain. You know your attention is limited and high value. Think about elite products, Rolex, Ferrari, Hermes. They're not flooding the market. They're not discounting their image. They are deliberately scarce. Their identity is rooted in being hard to access. You are no different. When you withhold your attention, when you speak less, chase less, explain less, you raise your perceived value. People start thinking, why isn't he more available? What does he have going on? Is he in high demand? And just like that, they start needing what you're not giving. Balance, not detachment but depth. Now, let's be clear. This doesn't mean becoming a cold, unfeeling robot. You don't need to be distant to be desirable. You need to be disciplined. Emotional distance is not emotional detachment. In fact, true magnetism comes from having real depth. But sharing it slowly, strategically, and selectively. You want to give people the sense that you are emotionally grounded. You are not dependent on their reaction. You could open up, but you choose not to just yet. That choice, that control, that's what makes people curious. That's what makes them obsess. 1.7 Summary. How to trigger obsession. Let's recap. You want to make people obsess? Don't give more, give less, but with purpose. Leave things slightly unresolved. Make your attention scarce. Use silence as a tool. Never be fully transparent. Share your depth only when earned. Always have something going on besides them. And most of all, stop chasing. Start attracting. Because obsession is not something you can force. It's something you create space for. When you become emotionally self-contained, when you let people wonder what you're thinking, when you stop overexposing yourself, you go from being nice to being captivating. Never reveal the whole of yourself to anyone. Always leave something to the imagination. Niccolò Machiavelli. In a world obsessed with exposure, where every thought is tweeted, every moment is shared, and every emotion is broadcast in real time, the most powerful person in the room is the one who says less than they know. The curse of clarity. We've been taught that transparency is always good. Be honest, be open, be real. But in the early stages of influence, relationships, or negotiation, clarity kills tension. Tension is the fuel of attraction. It's the invisible thread that keeps people interested, intrigued, engaged. When you overshare too soon, when you explain every feeling, justify every action, or define every boundary up front, you extinguish that tension. And without tension, there is no curiosity. No curiosity, no chase, no value. The more clearly people can read you, the more quickly they categorize you. I get him. He's nice. He's like X. And just like that, you're boxed, finished, known. And what is fully known is rarely deeply desired. The power of being slightly unreadable. Think of your favorite movie characters, the ones who linger in your mind. They're never the ones who explain themselves to death. They're the ones who seem to know something you don't. The ones who speak in implications, not declarations. The ones who leave just enough unsaid. You don't quite understand them, but you want to. This is power. The most magnetic people aren't the most expressive. They're the most suggestive. When you speak in a way that invites interpretation, when your silence is laced with meaning, when your reactions are minimal, calm, measured, you become a projection surface. People begin filling in the blanks. They assume depth, they assume complexity, and their assumptions are often far more flattering than anything you could say yourself. 2.3 Mystery creates perceived depth. Psychologically, mystery is heuristic. That means our brain uses it as a shortcut. When someone is hard to read, we unconsciously assign them more intelligence, experience, emotional depth, strategic thinking. It's the reason the strong, silent type is such a cliché in cinema, because we assume that silence equals self-control, that stillness equals strength. This doesn't mean you never speak. It means when you speak, it matters. The less noise you make, the more weight your words carry. People obsess over what they don't understand. Obsession doesn't grow in obviousness. It grows in ambiguity. That's why a text that says, "I miss you," is sweet. A text that says nothing for 3 days after deep connection, obsessive. When you're a little hard to read, when your motives aren't immediately obvious, when your energy fluctuates slightly, unpredictably, you become irresistible. Because people can't figure you out. And if they can't figure you out, they'll keep thinking about you until they do. This is the power of emotional asymmetry. They're thinking about you more than you're thinking about them. The moment you hand someone the full picture of who you are, they stop painting one in their mind. So give them the outline, not the canvas. Let them fill it in. Silence as a weapon. In conversations, arguments, interviews, or dates. The person who's more comfortable with silence usually has the upper hand. Silence does 4 things. It creates pressure. People rush to fill it. It reveals weakness. Most people break it to explain, over-justify, or overshare. It signals control. It shows you don't need to dominate. It builds mystery. Silence invites interpretation. Learn to hold your pauses. Speak slower than you think you should. Let questions linger longer before answering. When you let silence breathe, it feels like gravitas. And gravitas is unforgettable. Questions over statements. Another tool to increase mystery? Ask more. Say less. Questions do 2 powerful things. They shift attention away from you, letting you remain an enigma. They reveal more about the other person, which gives you power. When you listen more than you speak, you do 2 things. You gain intel, you increase intrigue. Most people love to talk about themselves, and when they do, and you say little in return, they walk away thinking, "That guy really gets me." There's something about him, and yet they barely know you. That's the point. Mystery isn't about saying nothing, it's about saying the right amount, and no more. Controlled vulnerability. Here's the nuance. Mystery doesn't mean hiding your entire self forever. It means timing your reveals. Vulnerability is powerful when earned. When given too early, it feels desperate. When offered too easily, it feels performative. But when revealed selectively, it becomes intoxicating. Think of yourself like a novel. If you open on the last chapter, what's the point of reading the rest? If you give away all your trauma, fears, and wounds in the first few pages, there's no suspense. But if you hint at complexity, if you allude to past pain, inner strength, hidden struggle, people lean in. They want more. They obsess. Digital mystery. This rule applies doubly in the digital world. In an age where everyone's online, the man who doesn't overshare stands out. Your digital presence should hint at depth, not display your diary. Be active, but not obvious. Be seen, but not overly explained. Let your online persona feel crafted, not chaotic. Don't post every emotion. Don't comment on every trend. Don't chase attention. Let people wonder where you are. Let them think you're up to something bigger. Your silence becomes your signal. Your absence becomes your presence. Rejection as mystery amplifier. Here's a brutal truth. Sometimes the best way to make someone obsessed is to deny them access. Not cruelly, not with malice, but with discipline. The human ego hates rejection. When you don't reciprocate instantly, or you walk away from disrespect, or you ignore manipulation, you send a clear message. I don't need this. And that makes you more valuable than someone who begs for validation. Your refusal becomes a mirror. They see themselves and their loss more clearly, and they start to obsess, because you're no longer accessible, and nothing fuels desire like denied access. Summary: mastering mystery. Let's sum this up. To become truly unforgettable, say less than you know. Use silence as a communication tool. Ask more questions than you answer. Reveal slowly, selectively, strategically. Maintain ambiguity in motives and emotions. Don't explain yourself. Let people draw their own conclusions. Make your digital presence minimalist and curated. Withhold validation when it's undeserved. Walk away cleanly. Let the silence speak. Remember, you don't need to be liked by everyone. You need to be unforgettable to the right people. Mystery isn't about hiding who you are. It's about understanding that mystery increases perceived value. Let people chase clarity. Let them earn your depth. Let their obsession grow in the gaps you choose to leave. It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. Niccolo Machiavelli. Desire doesn't come from presence. It comes from absence. Not total disappearance, but strategic distance, controlled space, unanswered questions. It's not about vanishing. It's about creating gaps wide enough for others to fall into. And the moment they do, they start pulling themselves toward you. That's the pull effect. The physics of desire. Think of desire like a magnet. The closer two magnets get, the stronger the attraction. But if they're too close, they stick, frictionless, and lose all tension. Now separate them slightly. What happens? Tension builds. The pull becomes electric. That space creates longing. In human dynamics, the same principle holds. If you're too available, you're taken for granted. If you're too distant, you're forgotten. But if you find the right balance of engaged withdrawal, you become magnetic. You turn into a paradox. Visible, yet unreachable. Familiar, yet elusive. And people don't just want you, they work for you. The overexposure effect. The human mind is wired to devalue familiarity. Psychologists call this the mere exposure effect. Repeated exposure to a stimulus increases our comfort with it, until comfort turns to boredom, and boredom turns to blindness. This is why people who overshare in dating and business in life tend to fade. They're seen too much, heard too much, understood too easily, and once you're fully understood, you can be fully dismissed. Desire, by contrast, thrives on curiosity. Curiosity thrives on inconsistency. When someone can't predict your behavior, when they don't know when you'll show up or how you'll respond, they stay mentally engaged. It's the unpredictability, the emotional asymmetry that creates obsession. The pull effect in dating. Let's make this real. Think about the last person you obsessed over. Were they the one who constantly texted you? Who poured out their feelings? Who chased you with unfiltered emotional transparency? Or were they the one who left you hanging just enough? Who gave you just enough to feel something, but not enough to feel secure? Exactly. The pull effect works because it activates uncertainty, and uncertainty is addictive. When someone gives you 70% of what you want, and you keep chasing the final 30%, you become emotionally invested in them. And the more invested you are, the more valuable they become. Not because they are more valuable, but because you've worked for their attention, and we always overvalue what we work for. Strategic inconsistency. Here's how to wield this in real life. Don't always respond immediately. Let people feel your absence. It creates space for their imagination to roam. Fluctuate your energy. Be warm one moment, cool the next. Not to manipulate, but to avoid becoming predictable. Give less than expected. Leave stories unfinished. Leave sentences with a hint of something deeper. Let curiosity do your work. Disappear occasionally, not as punishment, but as recalibration, to remind them how it feels to not have access to you. This doesn't mean being rude. It means being deliberate. Your energy is currency. Don't spend it recklessly. 3.5 Distance creates demand. Ever wonder why luxury brands don't advertise like everyone else? Why they don't chase customers? Because they understand something most people don't. Distance creates demand. The harder something is to get, the more people want it. This applies to attention, to emotion, to presence. When you're always there, you're cheap. When you're rare, you're valued. The same man who's too available is ignored until he becomes hard to reach, and suddenly he's desirable. Be the emotional equivalent of a limited edition, not scarce out of neediness, but selective out of discipline. You don't give less because you can't. You give less because you choose to, and that choice is intoxicating. The mystery of what are they thinking? Desire often doesn't come from what someone does. It comes from what we think they're doing. What are they doing right now? Why haven't they replied? Are they pulling away or just busy? That internal dialogue is a symptom of the pull effect. When you step back, when you delay or deflect or hold a little back, you activate the most powerful force in human psychology: rumination. People start replaying interactions in their head. They analyze tone. They dissect timing. They assign meaning. And they do all the emotional heavy lifting. You become a puzzle. And the human brain loves puzzles it can't solve. Desire and identity projection. When people don't fully know you, they project onto you. They create a version of you in their mind. A version that aligns with their fantasies, their ideals, their desires. If you're too available, too clear, too defined, you ruin the fantasy. But if you remain slightly undefined, you become a mirror. They don't fall in love with you. They fall in love with what you represent. The person who could validate them, the partner who could complete them, the opportunity they've been chasing. And as long as that projection lives, so does the desire, applying this to power. This isn't just about dating or relationships. The pull effect applies to business, status, and social power. The speaker who pauses longer gets more attention. The leader who isn't always accessible is more respected. The expert who doesn't overexplain is trusted more. The friend who listens more than they speak becomes the one everyone turns to. Distance isn't just physical. It's emotional, energetic, and it's powerful. Because people chase what they don't fully have. What distance isn't? To clarify, distance isn't ghosting, that's cowardice, not strategy. Distance isn't manipulation. If you're playing games to hurt, you're not powerful, you're petty. Distance isn't detachment. The goal isn't to never feel. It's to never let your feelings control your presence. Distance is about knowing your value so well that you don't throw it at people. How to train the pull effect. This isn't something you master overnight. But here's a roadmap. Audit your behavior. Where are you over-available? Where do you give too much? Slow down your responses. Take time before you react, in text, in speech, in emotion. Create windows of absence, periods of intentional withdrawal to reset the dynamic. Speak less. Watch more. Give people space to come toward you. Be the mystery. Not out of fear, but out of power. You don't have to chase anyone. Let them chase the idea of you. Summary: become the pull. Let's review. Desire comes from strategic absence, not constant presence. Familiarity breeds contempt, or at least complacency. The less they know, the more they project. The harder you are to access, the more value you carry. Emotional space breeds curiosity, which breeds obsession. People chase what feels just out of reach. Your value is amplified by your discipline. Never outshine the master. Machiavelli taught restraint, but in the modern world, never outgive your value, because once they feel like they own you, they stop desiring you. So stop trying to prove your worth. Start letting people discover it, on your terms and on your timeline. The lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves. Niccolò Machiavelli. Power isn't loud. Real authority moves in silence. It doesn't demand respect, it commands it by presence alone. We've been fed a lie, that to be dominant, you must be aggressive. That to lead, you must roar. That to win, you must always be the loudest in the room. But here's the truth. The people with the most control often say the least. And that silence, that stillness, that's what makes them dangerous. The myth of loud leadership. Think of the people who shout in meetings, who interrupt, who bark orders to look important. They're not powerful, they're insecure. Loudness is often compensation for lack of direction, lack of clarity, lack of self-trust. It's performative dominance. And the second someone more composed walks into the room, the loud one fades like background noise. Why? Because true leaders don't perform, they project. And projection doesn't come from your vocal cords. It comes from your certainty. The psychology of quiet power. There's a psychological term called the paradox of authority. The more someone needs to prove their authority, the less actual authority they have. It's why kings sit while others stand. Why bosses speak last. Why the most feared characters in films say the least. Calm power is unsettling. It suggests inner confidence. It suggests control. It suggests you're playing a deeper game. And most importantly, it creates a symmetry. People don't know what you're thinking. They don't know how you'll react. And that uncertainty gives you the upper hand. Controlled stillness, the body language of power. Before you even speak, your body sends signals. Fast movements, nervousness, fidgeting, insecurity, constant smiles, social desperation. Now contrast that with stillness. Slow, measured gestures, long, deliberate eye contact, minimal movement unless necessary. This is the body language of a general, not a soldier. Of someone who doesn't need to react because they are already in control. Stillness isn't passive, it's poised. And poised people dominate without saying a word. Try it. Walk into your next room slower. Speak 20% slower. Pause before you answer. You'll feel awkward because you're not used to it. But others will feel your weight because silence, when chosen, becomes loud. Words are weapons. Use them sparingly. The more words you use, the less each one means. Think of powerful speakers. Jocko Willink, Barack Obama, Christopher Nolan in interviews, Robert Greene in conversation. They don't rush. They don't fill space. They speak like their words are currency, to be spent only when valuable. And when they speak, people listen, because their silence conditioned us to pay attention. Now contrast that with someone who never shuts up. They may be fun, but they're not feared, not respected, not remembered. Your power isn't in how much you say. It's in what happens when you speak. Never explain, rarely defend. Machiavelli wrote, "It is better to act and ask forgiveness than to seek permission." In the modern world, this means make your moves, own your decisions. Don't over-explain them. Because when you justify, you weaken. You signal uncertainty, that maybe your actions need approval. And once others sense that, your authority crumbles. Now this doesn't mean arrogance, it means clarity. If you make a decision, stand by it. If you say no, say it without softening. If you take space, don't rush back to explain why. Command is about deliberate presence. You do what needs to be done, and let others adapt. Calmness in conflict. Here's the true test of your power. How do you behave under pressure? Most people raise their voice, get defensive, try to outtalk their opponent. You stay calm, you slow down. You absorb energy rather than reflect it, because the calmest man in the room is the one most dangerous. Why? Because no one knows what he's capable of. Calmness is unsettling. In a world addicted to emotional reactions, calmness feels alien. It hints that you're not reacting, you're calculating. And that's terrifying to your enemies. The advantage of emotional distance. The person with emotional distance always wins, not because they don't care, but because they can still think. You need to become a master of this. Don't take things personally. Don't respond emotionally. Don't show your cards. In fact, show nothing. Let people guess. Let them project. Let them work to understand you. The less you reveal, the more power you hold. Think of it as your internal firewall. It doesn't block connection. It filters noise. It protects clarity. It ensures you never become reactive. Calm authority in business and leadership. Let's get tactical. In meetings, don't rush to speak. Let others go first. In negotiation, speak last. Pause before every answer. In leadership, don't micromanage. Delegate, then disappear. In team dynamics, be the emotional anchor, not the amplifier. People follow calm leaders, not just because they feel safe, but because they feel led. And the best way to lead? Be the one who feels like they've already won, even when they haven't, especially when they haven't. Public perception and power maintenance. To maintain this calm authority, guard your reputation. Don't rant online. Don't speak badly of others. Don't seek validation through social media or public approval. Be mysterious, be disciplined, be above it. Machiavelli understood this. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. Let that be your brand. Present enough to be respected. Hidden enough to be feared. Calm enough to be followed. Command is earned in silence. Here's the final truth. You don't earn command by speaking louder. You earn it in the quiet moments. When you don't react. When you don't interrupt. When you choose stillness over chaos. When your presence calms the room just by existing. These moments build your power, not all at once, but slowly, invisibly, irrevocably. Until one day, you're the person everyone looks to before they move, before they speak, before they decide. And that's command. Absence diminishes mediocre passions and increases great ones, as the wind extinguishes candles and fans fires. François de la Rochefoucauld. In a world where attention is currency, emotional distance is power. People chase what they can't fully have. They fixate on what they don't understand, and they obsess over what they feel slipping away. This chapter is about turning that principle into a force, one that draws people to you not through desperation, but through controlled absence. The paradox of presence. Imagine two people. One is always available, always online, always quick to reply. The other is strategic, sometimes warm, sometimes silent, often busy. Which one holds power? It's the second, always. Because humans don't just respond to connection, they respond to contrast. Without distance, there is no longing. Without mystery, there is no desire. Without space, your presence loses value. The scarcity effect. We're wired to overvalue what's rare. Marketers use it, luxury brands rely on it, and the best leaders embody it. Emotional distance creates perceived scarcity. You're not always around. You don't always respond. You don't let others consume your time endlessly. So when you do show up, it means something. This is how you become missed, not managed. Not someone who's taken for granted, but someone whose attention feels like a gift. Avoid the trap of emotional availability. There's a modern sickness, being too available. People think openness is the path to connection, but unfiltered constant availability kills mystique. It makes you predictable, and predictability is the enemy of obsession. Set boundaries. Don't share everything. Don't always reply. Don't feel guilty for retreating into solitude. Because every time you remove yourself, you create mental real estate in others. They wonder where you are, what you're thinking, why you've gone quiet. And that wondering, that's your grip tightening. Strategic absence. To master emotional distance, you need to use strategic absence. This doesn't mean ghosting. It doesn't mean being cold or manipulative. It means withdrawing with purpose. Not to punish, but to amplify your value. Take space after an intense interaction. Leave parties early. Delay responses during high emotion moments. Each of these actions creates psychological pull. You stop being just another person and start becoming an idea. And ideas linger. 5.5 Signal independence. Clinginess is kryptonite. Emotional distance signals strength. When you seem unaffected, composed, and complete on your own, you become infinitely more magnetic. Not because you're distant in personality, but because you radiate the message. I choose to be here. I don't need to be. That phrase, unspoken, is what makes people chase. Be less known, more felt. The more people know you, the less they imagine about you. The less they imagine, the less they long. This is a brutal truth. Every time you overshare, every time you make yourself fully legible, you trade mystery for comfort. And comfort is not what makes people obsessed. Obsession lives in the unknown. Be felt, not explained. Be understood, but not fully. Your mystery is your moat. Mastering controlled vulnerability. People confuse emotional distance with coldness. That's a mistake. You can be warm, you can be kind, but the difference is this. You reveal vulnerability on your terms. Controlled vulnerability, not trauma dumping. Selective openness and not emotional volatility. This makes you appear human, yet composed. Relatable, yet elusive. And that combination, that's what turns admiration into obsession. The comeback principle. Leave, then return, stronger. This is one of the oldest social strategies in history. Think of it like tension and release. You retreat. Your absence creates longing. You reappear, evolved, more focused, more calm, more powerful. And in that moment, people remember why they admired you in the first place. Only now your value has multiplied. Because people will always respect the person who walks away to grow, then returns on their own terms. Don't be afraid to lose people. To be truly magnetic, you must be willing to walk away from relationships, from conversations, from opportunities that drain your energy. If you're afraid to lose people, they can never truly fear losing you. Emotional distance isn't just a tactic, it's an identity. You don't chase, you attract, you don't beg, you decide, you don't settle, you disappear. This is what keeps your value high. This is what keeps their obsession alive. Detachment is devotion to yourself. Detachment isn't indifference, it's prioritizing your own peace above their validation. It's recognizing that your energy, time, and presence are gifts, and they must be treated that way. When people see you pull away to protect yourself, to grow, to focus, to realign, they respect you more, not less, because emotional distance is the ultimate form of self-respect. And the more you respect yourself, the more others will, without you needing to ask. You've just learned how to cultivate obsession through emotional distance. Not with tricks, not with fakery, but by becoming the kind of person who doesn't need attention, and that's why they get it. Remember, be calm, not passive. Be distant, not cold. Be confident, not performative. And when you combine those traits, you don't just gain followers, you create devotees. If you've made it this far, you're not like most. You don't want surface-level advice, you want power, real power. The kind that changes how people see you, how they speak to you, how they remember you. If this video spoke to you, like it. It tells the algorithm to show this to other people like you. And if you want to build a life where you're the one being chased, where people feel your absence and crave your presence, then hit subscribe, because we're just getting started. The next few videos, they'll build you into someone unforgettable. So hit that button, and remember, stay calm, stay distant, stay powerful.